Welcome, everybody, to the Mindset Monday podcast. I'm Denise Zach, your host. So excited for today. I have an amazing guest. If you haven't been here before, this podcast is part of the Game Plan U network. And Game Plan U is an organization that helps startups in the sports marketing, sports entertainment, sports consumption, viewing world. And we help early stage startups to get connected, to build their network, to learn more about business development and their pitches and getting funding. And we also bring in executives and residents who are giving back to the community and really supporting our founders to build their brand, to build their business, and to be as successful as they can be. In addition, we help students and student athletes who are in college and want to make their way in the sports entertainment world or sports marketing world. And they're looking for ways to build their resume and build their portfolio. We bring them on with our founders and our executives and residents to create this community where our students are then supporting the projects of our startups. And it is an amazing organization. If you want to learn more about it, check us out at www.gameplanu.org. This podcast is part of that organization. I talk with people who are in the sports world, in sports marketing, in sports entertainment, really doing amazing things and changing the way that we watch and consume and interact with sports. And I get into those 6 inches in between their ears to understand how they show up to their day, how they are successful, and how they keep moving forward in a world that we know is very competitive and challenging, to say the very least. And to that end, today I have an amazing guest. Dan Mannix is going to be joining me in just a couple of minutes, but I want to tell you just a little bit about him first. He founded LeadDog Marketing Group in 1999, and he was recognized by Sports Business Journal's 40 Under 40 in the early years of LeadDog. And LeadDog's clients include sports and entertainment properties like NHL, MLB, USTA, USGA, WWE, Oprah Winfrey's O Magazine, Cirque du Soleil, sports marketing, brand experience work, also with brands like Coca-Cola, Reebok, Intel, Verizon, as well as startup brands like Whoop, Drone Racing League, and Athletes Unlimited. And after being named Sports Experiential Agency of the Year in 2016, LeadDog was acquired by CSM Sport and Entertainment, a global sports marketing agency where Dan became the CEO of CSM North America, leading 6 agencies that came together to form CSM North America. And now he's currently their senior advisor. I could go on probably for another 15 minutes about all the amazing things that Dan has done, but I think I will just bring him on so you can meet him. In addition to being all these things, he's also an amazing dad and a husband, and just doing really, really good things in the world of sports, entertainment, and marketing and business. And so I'm going to bring Dan on without further ado. Dan, hi.
Hello, Denise. Wow. I need to hire you as my publicist. Thank you for the very kind intro. And hopefully my son, Jackson, thinks I'm an amazing dad. But,
I'm sure he does.
Thank you for that nice intro. And I'm very excited to be here this morning.
Well, you're welcome. I'm super excited to have you on. I had the pleasure of meeting you a few weeks ago when we had our founders on, and you were amazing. You had such amazing insights for them. And I just know that you provided such a wealth of information to them at the stage that they're at. To get that type of support, I think, is invaluable. And so I want to dive into that in a little bit. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about LeadDog, why you started it, and how it kind of got you to where you are now with CSM?
Sure. I wish I had a better founder story. And in terms of when I started having a strategic plan, because nowadays I see business plans and founders and have so many things laid out. I guess I had the core values and principles that I brought to the startup. And I think I first had the seed for starting LeadDog when I was 24, actually. And I was I played soccer my whole life and sat on the bench at Richmond for a year, which was humbling. But Spiders, go Spiders. But my first job was at the Astrodome, and sometimes lack of experience or naivete can be helpful. So I went to my boss and said, we should bid on the World Cup. And he looked at me and he's like, Mannix, you idiot. It's played on grass outdoors. And I'm like, let me look into it. So he let me look into it and ended up proving that grass could grow indoors. We did a grass test. I wrote the whole bid for the city of Houston. I remember thinking like I could have given away the keys to the city. We like submitted at the last minute. Yeah. So I ended up working at the time with an agency that came in at the 11th hour to try and help support the bid. And I wasn't impressed. And I remember thinking it kind of sparked, wow, just in terms of service and details. And I had, I said, wow, I could have my own company someday if this guy can have a company. So I guess the bar initially was low. Started doodling names. I had a T-shirt at the time I worked out and it said, if you're not the lead dog, the scenery never changes. So I was doodling the name, came up with LeadDog, and then added marketing group. So back then, but then I got somewhat of a dream job for me because I grew up a huge NBA Knicks fan and played basketball in high school. Got a job at the NBA, moved back to the East Coast, and was many years at the NBA. And then I went on a long backpacking trip when I left the NBA. So I guess I could say when I was hiking in Nepal, I came up with the LeadDog name, but that's not the case. But but did have read Mark McCormick's books, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, Don't Wrestle with a Pig, and I just remember thinking when I got back from my backpacking trip, like, let me take a shot at starting my own company, and just had high standards from the NBA, very fortunate, from David Stern and Russ Granick and Val Ackerman and Rick Welts, just Gary Stevenson, amazing leaders and mentors. So I feel like just bringing those principles and that standard to a company, even though I didn't have much of a strategy, really helped form some of the core beliefs, and also that belief that like anything's possible. So when we first started, having the mindset of when it was me, and then I convinced two people that didn't know each other, who I knew very well, to come together to form the first three of us, and had the mindset of, again, maybe again, naive, being like, we can be the next IMG. My one partner, Charlie, was more practical, and he's like, what are you smoking? That's crazy. We could never be that. And I'm like, why not? Someone's got to be. John, someone says they want to be president, like Obama, and becomes president. So having that belief that anything's possible, I think, was in the DNA of LeadDog, and it's what we look for in people and individuals who had that passion. And a lot of it actually goes back to sports and people when you were on athletics and on teams, having that chip, so to speak. So
I love that. And, it's really just cool to listen to your story, because it's like it's been a pattern in your world. So, you start this job and you think, well, why can't grass grow inside? Why not? Why can't we make this happen, right? And so it sounds to me like you always ask yourself that question, why not? Why can't grass grow inside? Why can't I be a leader? Why can't we be the next IMG? And I think that there's something so positive about that and energizing, and maybe a little bit naive, but if you're not asking the question, then what are you doing?
I agree. I think I have you have different sayings or beliefs that start to form over, many years now that I'm 39. I'm sorry, 39 plus 15, 54, and proud of it. That's why I'm wearing the hat. Now, luckily, the Zoom calls, you can cover your bald head and gray beard. But look, I was very lucky and fortunate, because you can ask why not, as I did at the Astrodome. And Neil, my boss, could have told me to get back to work. I was in an environment where you were able to pursue ideas and have a little bit of a runway to explore. So that entrepreneurial environment, even though I was at a big company that owned the Astros and ran the Astrodome, and we ran other facilities like the Miami Arena through a management company, I was so lucky. Neil Gunn, who passed away a few years ago, one of my mentors and friends, he let me explore things. He was an entrepreneur. He was a concert promoter previously. So look, for young people, whether it's founders getting investors and advisors, or I love the student program that you you mentioned game plan does. Like the environment you're in at the start is so much even, I think, more important than what you're working on. People get too caught up in sports. Like, I want to work for this team. And it's like, who are you working for? Who are you working with? Yeah. And are you working for people who say, you report to me versus you're my partner? Like what words matter, and the energy and environment that people create matter. And I was fortunate that I learned from some great people that then hopefully take the best of what I learned from them to apply to LeadDog when I started it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make an important point here, especially for founders, is who you surround yourself with and who you have the opportunity to be around make a huge difference in your success. And
absolutely.
And sometimes we don't have those options though, right? And I know that one of your passions right now is helping underrepresented people and businesses get into the spotlight or get support and find their way. And so what do you say to people who might not have the best environment, who may not be surrounded by the people that are building them up, and maybe in fact are even saying, what are you, crazy? Get back to work, get behind your desk.
Sure.
What do you say to that?
Well, look, there's a lot of different paths to that, and it depends on circumstances. So it would be stupid to say, oh, quit your job if you're paying a mortgage and you have responsibilities and you have obligations. So you need to plan and have a path. But ultimately, if you're in an environment or energy that's not conducive with your values, with what drives you or motivates you, ideally you proactively make a plan to get into a different environment. It may take 6 months, it may take a year, it may take 2 weeks if you're lucky. But if you end up in an environment where you're like on Wednesday in the elevator and you're like, oh, it's hump day, I can't wait till the weekend. Like, life is too short. Like that's like, you're like the Wicked Witch of the West slowly melting and your soul's like being sucked away. So, but the realities of like financial and those things, you have to plan and look, you have to keep trying, right? You know, we have a quote downstairs like, failures continues to be failure until you get around that corner. I'm butchering the quote, but until you get around the corner where you finally break through. Like I personally love, and you think of like some things that are like now everybody would point to as success, right? The Harry Potter books, the TV show Survivor, Starbucks, Howard Schultz, all those stories. You're like, oh, well, that's a huge company. Well, guess what? I think it was 12 publishers said no to Harry Potter at first, right? Survivor pitched every network until I think CBS said yes. Like Howard Schultz, if you read his book, it's amazing. Every venture group in Seattle said no, and it was like the last one that funded him. Big new ideas are scary for people. Like new things, like people talk about innovation and all these things, but like most people still wait till something's the safe choice to do it. So it's like balancing that entrepreneurial leap, whatever that is for your own career, with thinking things through. And then you have to balance, you can't always know every single detail, right? Like there's some stats I love from Jim Collins, the author, where like CEOs, you can't wait to have 95% of the information to make a decision, because by that point it's too late and you're making more decisions too slowly. So what's the percentage you have to then ultimately take a leap? So you know you're not going to hit the cement in the pool, but it may not be exactly the temperature you want. And then you have to figure it out once you hit the water.
Yeah, it's such good advice. And that planning and being patient is so important, because you're going to have a lot more no's and a lot more barriers, especially in the beginning, especially with something that you've never done before or need to learn and grow through before you have that success, right?
Yeah, the one thing I'd build on, like I'm not a patient person. I'd use a different P than patient probably. I'd say persistence and perseverance. We rented office space, she worked out of her office, Sue Roden, who's the founder of WISE, Women in Sports and Events. Mm-hmm. Classic example on a number of fronts. Like she was a school teacher and she took the leap, and actually I think at one point represented Julie Foudy and other players after the 1996 Olympics. Mm-hmm. But she talks about the power of persistence. Again, you steal things from other people and apply them. And it's like professional persistence. So not becoming a stalker. So not meeting someone and then sending them like 6 messages, or being John Favreau, where you leave 10 messages when you get someone's number in a bar. Yeah. So But professional persistence is you have a goal, you meet someone, do it in the right way, but show that you're not going to just drop off. Too many people send one letter, make one call, and then they say, oh, well, they didn't respond. Like, no, when the door closes, go through the window or go around back and bang on that door. Like, professional persistence is the difference between so many times success and excuses.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But not necessarily something that comes naturally for all people. And there's a threshold I think that people have. But to be a founder, to be a startup, I think it requires you to have a bunch more persistence than someone who's doing a 9 to 5 and has a steady kind of stable income, because you have to get around the people that are saying no, or you have to convince people that it is the right book, it is the right time, it is the right movie or TV show to take on, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's something you said, it's interesting, related to not being natural for some people. Or one of the things I always like honed in on when people are like, oh, I'm uncomfortable doing that. And I'm like, I think there's a misnomer when people come across as confident or they're doing something for a long time, so they become better at it. But like, I present all the time, but I was at a dinner recently for Sports Innovation Lab with all these women, amazing leaders in sports business. And everybody had to stand up in front of about 40 people and talk. And like, when it got to my turn, my heart was still pounding through my chest because everybody was so well spoken. And I'm like, I'm an imposter compared to how like talented these people are. So I think people can use it as an excuse by saying like, oh, it doesn't come natural to me. Like, nothing comes like no one shoots a 3-pointer from birth, like, and it's natural. No, it's hours in the gym practicing, right? So like, I think I remember when in college, my senior year, I was worked for the Volunteer Action Council, which was this great organization. And I remember having to present to like 70 people, I think, or 100 people, and being at the podium and my leg shaking so much that I'm like, they must be laughing, saying like, he's literally shaking like a leaf. And like, look, I spoke when I ran the basketball at the Olympics in '96. I was like keynote at the Atlanta Tip-Off Club, this basketball organization. Same thing. I was up in front of like 400 people. It was the first time like at a dinner like that. I was at the Days, the podium. I literally thought people must be seeing how much I'm sweating. My face is red. And you overcome, and you may not get fully comfortable in those situations, but you get through them and you learn, and hopefully you learn and apply what you learn to the next situation, next best decision, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and I think it's interesting. The founders that we work with, it's fun to watch their transformation and how they, the first time they do their pitch with us, right? And it's maybe not the first time they've done their pitch, but they're earlier in their business development and in their savvy and in their awareness of kind of what they want to present, how they want to present. So, and to watch them progress from the beginning, when they get the feedback and they get a little bit more comfortable, they progress and they change, and they, their background changes, their demeanor changes, their language changes, their story changes, and all that. So you're right. I think it does come with practice and with persistence. The other piece of it, though, that you talk about is the nerves. And I think nerves help us in a lot of ways. We don't want it to get to the point where they paralyze us, because that can happen as well. But there's this thing called eustress. It's what
eustress?
Yeah, it's eustress. It's the stress that you need to actually do a good job. Because if you didn't have any stress, you wouldn't care enough to actually function the way that you need to function. So we need to have that little bit of a butterfly in our belly so that we get organized and get pumped up and get ready.
And it's the balance. Like I'm fascinated by like organizational psychology and what makes people tick. I've always felt like my fear of failure actually drives me in some ways more than just like the win. Mm-hmm. And I think back, like we made in soccer in high school, we in the playoffs, we ended up going to overtime, and because it got dark, they were coming back the next day for a shootout. And this was penalty kicks, but from 35 yards out, old format where you have 5 seconds to dribble in. And we sit in the locker room beforehand, or the classroom, and I got chosen to shoot first for our team. And I think back, I'm like, did Mr. Ewing, the assistant coach, choose me because I had shown fake confidence? We had all been practicing it, and of course was so nervous in a moment like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to, they talk about when teams get to the finals for the first time and they freeze, and it takes them the time to get used to that environment to then come back the next year. Like, you go through things, and each uncomfortable experience, I'd always say to staff at LeadDog, and that sometimes I'd be in conflict with people on this, put people into the deep end of the pool. And I'm like, we're not going to let you drown, but there is going to be times where you're like almost drowning or really struggling before we throw you the life preserver. Because when you let people stretch, you get to a point where they surprise themselves as how far they can go. It's kind of like no one broke the 4-minute mile, and then Roger Bannister did it. And I think in the next 18 months, like 8 people did it because they thought then something was possible they never thought was possible before.
Yeah.
So the same thing can apply to business and individuals as they tackle things in their life.
I love that. And what you remind me of is that kind of fight, flight, or freeze response that we have in our brain, and that some people do freeze when they come up against adversity. And it sounds to me like you're a fighter, that something challenges you, that fear of failure, and you're like, hell no, I'm diving in, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it good. Not everybody has that response. Some people, like you said, do have that freeze response, and that's where the learning comes in, and that's where the persistence comes in, and maybe the right mentorship and guidance as well.
Well, that's where my brain was going when you said that, and I hope I have 6 inches. You talked about the 6 inches between your ears, and I have big ears. I've always felt like a little bit of a chip that I have maybe 4 inches between my brain, so I did like work harder. I actually remember when I started at the NBA, first meeting, my boss said, "You may have been an all-star at the Astrodome, but everybody who works here was like the best at their organizations." And I remember just thinking, oh my God, like it was almost like Robbie Benson and One-on-One. I'm dating myself with an old basketball where he shows up at college, and it was like a whole nother level. And I was like, okay, I've just got to outwork people. So I think there's a lot of it's the environment. People freeze. People can always freeze then, and that's their story, and that's their that's just their like dialogue, right? Or they have a coach or a mentor or someone who calls BS and pushes and prods them, and ideally not to like, puts them in an environment where they can fail and it's okay and they can learn from it. Like, again, I was so lucky. I had a lot of people who did that. I've worked with clients in environments where it was such a fear of making any mistake because they were going to be fingers pointed at them, that it was a miserable environment and a culture of like, just protecting themselves. Like, that's not a place to grow or to experiment. Definitely not innovation percolating within those environments. So it's really, how do you, when you're in the interview process, trying to understand the organization's DNA and culture and values. So it's not just about a brand name, whether it's the NFL or IMG. It's like, what's that day-to-day like for the employees and the environment?
Yeah. And really, I love the fact that you're kind of talking about the story that people tell themselves, because all too often we get caught up in our own narrative that doesn't serve us in any way, shape, or form. And quite honestly, it can hold us back and prevent us from being our best selves. And so I always try to encourage our founders or any client that I'm working with or someone that I'm talking with, even if it's just a friend who's struggling, is what is that story that you're telling yourself, playing on repeat, that reinforces that holding you back or that barrier, and how can you change it? And that can be something that is challenging, certainly challenging to do, but if you pay attention to and you know that it's there, you can work on changing it and kind of showing up.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Denise, you're a yoga guru from like seeing your background. It's like, I think part of changing the story for people, everything's different for different people, right? What are the things that get you into the right mindset and heart set to not be going down a rabbit hole of stories that are not productive? So like finding those things that lets you be as grounded as possible. And that can be a number of different sources. That can be people and support. That can be therapy. For me, a lot of it's fitness. Even when I started working at the NBA and was working crazy hours, I'd get back to Weehawken, New Jersey. And if I had to go for a 5-mile run at 10 o'clock to clear my head, that was a big part of me being able to function effectively and work, was that stress relief. So what are those things like? And there's so many resources for that. Obviously, everybody's time challenged. So you've got to make habit and discipline to do those things, just like, getting sleep, right? Nutrition. For me, it's Peloton and fitness. Like, whether it's meditation, and what apps. Like now, there's so many things now and so much going on in the world that like, what's that space for you that puts you in the best position to be happy, to be successful, to be a good coworker, a good partner? Like, I've worked with Oprah for many years. We were lucky. So I've drank the Kool-Aid related to Oprah and Glennon Doyle Mountain, and Brene Brown.
I love it. I love it. You're speaking about my gurus,
Yeah.
the people that I aspire to even 1 inch to be like them.
I agree.
Yeah.
I love Untamed, Glennon Doyle's book, which highly recommend to any of your listeners.
Yeah, just good stuff. And I think that when we talk about finding our way, we have to find inspiration. We have to find the people that are going to lift us up, and we have to keep going every single day, because no one's coming, right? I think about Mel.
What do you
Robbins,
mean no one's coming?
Mel Robbins, she is a speaker and a motivational speaker. She's basically saying you have to rely on yourself. There can be people along the path that support you, but at the end of the day, no one's going to come and do it for you. You have to get up. You have to take action. You have to move forward. You have to be your own cheerleader, and make yourself do the things that are uncomfortable, to do the things that you don't want to do, if you know that it's the right path for you. And I love that message. And it sounds like that's a lot of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. I think absolutely. First and foremost, you have to be responsible and accountable for your own actions, the things you do. Look, your thoughts lead to your intentions, which lead to your actions, right? So ultimately, you decide. Like, so yes, you can build up a story. I can't do this. I can't do that. Those are all stories you tell yourself. But like, it can be harder, right, to get up at 5:30 and work out or meditate, right? And you can like not do that and then over caffeinate and like get lack of sleep, and then you're going down one path versus another. Hopefully related to karma, if you're also putting out good energy and helping other people and genuinely doing things for the right reasons and not just selfish interests, it ends up coming back tenfold. So yes, it's you as an individual have to control your own destiny, but when you put it out there, it's amazing what ends up coming back. And for me, that's like the beauty of life, really, is like how many amazing individuals there are out there. As much as there's so much crap going on in the world, right, and stresses and bad things, there's so much more just positive things and great people that people want to help people in general. And actually, one thing I'd say to founders or to someone coming out of college, if you end up like seeing people, yes, you want a job, you want investors, all these things, but it's like, if people don't align with your values or your instincts are like, this isn't someone I want energetically around me, like the power of no is very powerful to free up time and space and energy, and surround yourself with people who make you feel good, who bring value, and then and listen to them, but listen to them with an asterisk. I think experience is overrated, and I've heard, as I start my new venture, I hear people say things so definitively from their own experience, and it's like goes back to why not. It's like, well, yes, that's one tack, but like, I don't agree with that, and I'm going to keep pushing on over here. Like, I'm not saying be totally blind to feedback, but just because someone's had 30 years experience or blah, 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 titles and degrees, like, it's like, you still have to trust your own instincts. It's kind of like with one-page resumes. Like, who said there had to be one-page resumes? And now all these college students squeeze on 6 font to show a million things. Like, I need glasses now. Yeah. Show me something visual. Send me a video. Do something a little more creative than the same thing that's like robots that every student does everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. And I wrote the word trust down as you were talking, and then you use the word trust, is kind of trusting your intuition and your own energy to kind of guide you. Yes, pay attention to the people that are around you, take their suggestions, take their advice, but like you said, with that asterisk, because at the end of the day, the path that someone else thinks is right for you might not be the path that you need to take or that you feel is the right one for you. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if Harry Potter, after the 6th rejection, could have said, well, I guess this was a crazy idea. I should just put this back on the shelf. Like, do you know how many people, how many Harry Potters there are out there that are like, are on shelves or in people's heads because of fear of failure or what people are going to perceive? Like, I was going back on Instagram the other night, and I was seeing videos of my son when he was younger. He's 12 now. And the free spirit of him dancing in different places and not worried about what anybody was thinking. Yeah. Like, how do us as humans get that? Like, I'm always too worried about what people think and a people pleaser, but like the freedom when you have your own beliefs and you know, sticking to your convictions, notwithstanding that there's going to be a lot of naysayers. People like don't want to try new things. They want things to stay as they are. So like, you know, I'm not saying if 100 people tell you some idea is a terrible business idea, if you don't listen to any of them or try and apply feedback, then you probably have your head in the sand. But like, you know, don't stop at the first couple of no's because someone else has a different perspective. Like, learn from it and move on.
And keep moving. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, I'm going to ask this question, but I feel like you have such a kind of go get it, move forward attitude that I'm not sure that there's anything that can get you down. But, you know, has there ever been anything?
Yes, there is.
Well, then, okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask it then. Is there anything that you felt at one point in your life could have gotten in the way or maybe did get in the way for a little while? I think so many people struggle with things sometimes and they fall down and they don't want to get back up, or they're not sure how to get back up and they feel lost.
Sure.
Can you relate to that at all? And can you share with us what that was like for you and how you kind of pushed through and continued on?
Absolutely. Look, success is overrated, right? It's particularly in sports business. Someone becomes head of a team or head of an agency, and too many people drink their own Kool-Aid and they're speaking on panels and on podcasts, and then everybody posts their own podcast like, I'm proud to be this, and they're like self-promoting. And I'll do the same thing to a certain extent, right? Because it's like helps business and so forth. But like, if people try and project that they like all of a sudden have it all figured out because they've had success, I mean, that's such a joke, and they're kidding themselves. And everybody was in kindergarten, right? Everybody like had to figure things out and had the pimple or like someone they had a crush on that didn't like them back. You know, it's like, so we're all navigating through things and have fears, and it's how you try and overcome them. Like fearless is not the absence of fear, right? Or bravery is like overcoming those. So look, for me, like things happen, and then it's like how you respond. I heard an amazing presentation last week. You get dealt your cards, right? And you can bemoan your cards and just spend all your energy talking about, oh, I got, you know, this terrible hand. Or you can actually make the best absolute of your hand. Now, me saying that, growing up in a rich town on Long Island, like to so much privilege, they already had like so many advantages, right? But for me, like you deal with different things. Like I was a total drunk. I gave up drinking when I was 22. My dad's a recovered alcoholic. So I feel fortunate that I had some things in my life happen that I said, wow, something else jarring happened to a family member that was super jarring, that made me say to myself, reflect and say, what can screw up my life, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, drinking can. And that's like, I quit cold turkey. And thankfully, I was able to, because my life would have been a totally different direction if I didn't make that choice. And don't get me wrong, when you're 22 moving to Texas and you're ordering a Diet Coke on a Friday night and everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you get a beer? The back slaps like, hey, I didn't have boots or a pickup truck. Right. So they're very uncomfortable that like, why don't you drink? And you like freeze because you're like brand new. And so yeah, you have to navigate through those things. And hopefully you know, I was very lucky, from my best friend from nursery school, who's still my best friend, to now my amazing wife, Michelle. You need those people also, as much as you're accountable for your own individual paths. Like, who are your closest friends and family that you can count on when the shit's really hitting the fan and you need a shoulder to cry on, or you need someone to lift you up? So hopefully people have those people in their lives that they can count on.
So a couple things that you said that I really like. One was reflection. You took a step back at one point because you saw something that was really jarring and upsetting, and you said, that can happen to me, or something like that can happen to me, and I want to prevent that. And how do I get out of my own way now? So you took a step back from just kind of being on that hamster wheel, that treadmill of life that a lot of us just kind of go without thinking. And I think that that is so incredibly important for people to do, is to take a step back from themselves and look at how they're operating in the world and what they're doing. And then, you talk about kind of taking that accountability and knowing that it's going to be hard, and no matter what, keeping going. And the third thing that you talked about was surrounding yourself with the right people that are going to support your process. Those three things, I think, can be incredibly helpful in terms of that, setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, everybody's going to deal with adversity. And if there's one thing I've found out, when things happen in life and you going through something, is you never know what's going on in someone else's life. And as you get older, when you're 25, you're fearless. You never think anything. Like, I quit my job at the NBA. I'm backpacking. Granted, I was a little older of a backpacker. I was like 31, but and then stuff starts happening. Parents getting older. Like, life happens, right? So it is, what are those different tools and resources to help you navigate through it? And finding what those are for you. Again, is it meditation? Is it reading? It's like inspiration can come in so many forms. It's like, remember the Titans, amazing movie that inspired me. Like on and on, like but making sure you actually can like find the time to take in those ingredients into your heart and soul that enables you to reflect, right? Because believe me, I react nonstop. If people from LeadDog listen to this at times when we're going through the recession or 9/11 or like the stresses of like a startup, borrowing money from family members, like tapping into my 401k, like, you go through all those things, and they inform you for the future. But when you're going through them, it's incredibly stressful. Your head's going to explode. Like, and behind the curtain, people don't know what's going on. So like people just end up seeing outward results, but the journey and the path can have a lot of bumps, but also that's what makes the road more interesting.
Yeah, and that everybody's on their own path, and that there is no one right way to do things sometimes, right? That
Absolutely.
There's different ways to do things, and you just have to keep trying and change one thing and keep going.
Absolutely. Everyone totally has their own path. And one of the things I've tried to apply is like, if you want to get to Mount Everest, or I use the Annapurna circuit because that's where I trek. There's a lot of ways to get there. So as a leader, and I've sucked at this for a long time, but give direction. But if someone has a different style or approach and they're going to get to the Annapurna circuit by like, going left and you want to go right, don't force them to go right if they're going to have their success by going left. And I think from the other side, I always say to people when I'm giving feedback to founders from all the mistakes I made, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Like, it's my 2 cents. It could be fundamentally so wrong for that person and their approach. Like, I used to talk to students and say, how many people would like to work at the MBA with sports marketing students? And everybody would raise their hand. And I'd say, how many people would think if you send your resume, you're not going to get a response? And almost everybody would raise their hand. And then I'd ask, well, how many of you are open to doing something different? Sending flowers, sending pizza, all things that I've done to people over time. So like, and I'd be surprised out of like 40 people, maybe 4 or 5 would raise their hands to do something different. And I'm like, well, you don't think you're going to get any response by doing the traditional. So again, why not? Why wouldn't you try some other tactic versus what stereotypical of what like career counselors tell you to do? Like, I think sometimes now execution's everything. If you sing a song or write a poem and it's like the worst poem, then they're going to be like, this poem sucks. Like, don't bring this person in. Yeah. But I got a tube one time, like, I don't know, 4-foot tube. And I didn't open it for a while. Finally opened it one night, late night, cleaning out my messy office. And it was literally a poem that a woman who had been at Richmond, my alma mater, wrote about the lead dog and it was this whole thing. And there was a picture of like 100 cats and one dog. And I was like, I called her at like 11 at night and was like, "You're hired." I think she was at like a keg party, and she thought it was like a prank. So again, so much is in the creative execution, but lean into what, if someone's a good painter, why not send a painting that tells a story about you? Why does it have to be an 8-font resume? Like, it's insane to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love the suggestion and advice to kind of do what makes sense for you. Do what's in your heart. Kind of follow your heart as much as you're trying to be logical and take the right path. You also need to kind of follow your heart and what leads you, what leads out from you, right, from within you, as opposed to just trying to be on the straight and narrow all the time. I think
absolutely.
Safe path.
Yeah, the straight and narrow is kind of boring.
Yeah. I can tell that's not something that you do.
It's kind of like, like sometimes you have to decide, but I always would say to people, if you're driving somewhere, like you're going to grandma's house in Florida, right? And you're on 995, and then you get a text from someone, you shouldn't be texting and driving, but you're in the passenger seat, and you get a text that in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh, someone's got like front row seats to Springsteen. You can have all the rationale in the world, like we've got this trip mapped out, we've got this hotel room, or you can decide to go to Springsteen and be front row, and like maybe it's different path, but it's probably going to be one that you're not going to regret going off the beaten path. That's
a good detour. Springsteen is a good detour for sure.
He is. I'm actually seeing Erykah Badu Thursday night, which I'm excited at awesome. Radio City. So
she's amazing. It's just nice to be able to get back into spaces with people and music and live events. So I love that.
Exactly.
Well, Dan, this has been amazing. Once again, your insights are so helpful and meaningful. I know for me, I feel like in talking to you that you've read a lot of, or you've been a psychologist in your past life or something like that.
or been on a therapist's couch. But no, I credit my wife Michelle, who's amazing. So many of the resources, you have to be open to trying them, but so many of the resources in books and teachings and Nicola Perla and Brene Brown and on, like taking in things that aren't necessarily right in front of you and being open helps you grow. So believe me, I have a million things we all do that we're working on, but fortunate that I have a great partner in Michelle who's exposing me to these things and meeting new people like you. I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing at Game Plan related to entrepreneurs, related to people getting into the industry. There needs to be more people that create access and opportunities for folks that typically haven't had it, which are, especially the sports industry, is seriously lacking in. There's change going on, but it's not fast enough and not enough. So if there's one thing I want to do over the next couple of years, is hopefully that have a positive impact on creating more opportunities for diverse individuals and companies.
Absolutely. And I know that that's on the docket for Game Plan U as well. And, our mission to really help people who need the support and who otherwise might not be able to move forward with their vision and with their passion. So
absolutely.
I want to just quickly, people can get in touch with you. This is your LinkedIn. And sure. I know it's long. I'll just have to cut and paste here. And then this is LinkedIn for CSM as
Super.
well. But CSM website as well. They can go and check that out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, anybody reach out. I'm easy to get a hold of. So
perfect. I love it. And it's great. And I thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom and your experience and just being so down to earth about it all. And a lot of times people get, like you kind of talked about before, a little bit alluded to, that there's some lofty ways that people kind of perceive themselves or what they're doing. And you're just kind of this super down to earth person who just wants to help.
Well, thank you. It excuse me. Hopefully people can find people that they aspire to make them better human beings. And I always used to joke with Alexandra Wentworth, who started as my assistant, and Christine Remar, who was an amazing person at LeadDog. I'm like, act like Christine and you're going to have success. dress for the job you want, not the job you have, show up in a professional way every moment, because look, you're always on, which can be unfortunate sometimes. Like, so it's like, and look, I talk too much, so I can say the wrong things sometimes, to be conscious of what you're saying. But I'm very lucky. Like, look, our chairman at CSM, Harlan Stone, is like the Michael Jordan of agency gurus. He's had more success than anybody in the industry, and you'd never know it because he takes it with a grain of salt. Humble, a family man, cares about people. So again, find those people who are the inspirations for you, and see what you can like steal from them and apply to your own life that hopefully makes you, better human being.
Right. I love it. And right. So not just building your business and your passion, but really building yourself as a person and being the best person that you can be. I think the combination of those two things is so important.
Absolutely. I mean, I think actually I'm biased. I'll do a plug. My wife's planner that she created, Seize Your Days, which I love, Carpe Diem. Why does everybody spend so much time on business plans and this obsession of their valuations and raising and all this stuff? People, I think, should take a step back more and create a life plan. And it's like they tie together, especially as worlds have merged, right? Where's the line cross of work and life and balance? Like, but if you step back and say, what's most important to me? Like Scott O'Neill's book, WMI, what's most important? Like, what things do you want in your life that make you happy? And start with that on your weekly planner, right? If it's tennis, if it's time with your kid, like, I'm amazed when people you can get on the treadmill, and I have too, believe me. I've learned from mistakes, like the early years of LeadDog when I wasn't as good a husband or dad as I wish. I look back and I'm like, God, I was clueless from the stress and things. So like, take a step back, find that time to say, am I on the right path? Am I doing things that bring me joy? And if not, like, make a change, because then if you're saying the same story over 2 years later, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm always amazed when people reach out and they won't even know you. And they're like, I know you're crazy busy, but, and you're like, A, you don't know me. You don't know if I'm crazy busy. Like, stop projecting that on me. I'm trying to get away from crazy busy. So everybody needs a little more of your yoga training.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I feel like as I've been talking to you, you've been picking out pieces of each of the chapters of the book that I wrote, which is
I want to read it.
Which is exactly about what you're talking about. And I'll do my own little shameless plug here is the book I wrote is Ripple Affect, Change Your Mind, Change Your Life, because we have our affect is our emotion and it ripples out from us. It impacts people around us, but we also are impacted by other people's affect. And if you understand what your thoughts and emotions and assumptions are about the world, and you can change that, the negative ones, then I think that you can change your life, and you plan for your life, right? You're not just have a
absolutely. I mean, I'm curious to read the book. I always struggle with affect A versus effect. I didn't do that well on the English SATs. So before I read it off to I've always tried to struggle with what those are. But either way, when I thought of the ripple effect, and I love the title, I immediately thought of Harlan Stone. Literally, his last name is Stone, and the ripple effect he's had on people's lives because he cares. There's an aspect of like the simple things of degrees and going back and getting your master's in this, or it's like, if people just care tremendously about what they do and their work product, care more, right? Good things happen, like on the simplest level. It may not be exactly on your time frame or the day you wanted, but like karma comes around.
I love that. And, I think if everyone moved forward with the mindset of, is this going to make the world a better place? Is this going to make someone happy? Is this going to create joy or opportunity or success for someone? This world will be a much better place.
Couldn't agree more. One thing I'd add to that, imagine if the sports business industry got as obsessed about changes in direct quantifiable impact on diversity as they are right now about NFTs and gambling and all these new revenue streams. Like, just think of what the industry could do if they actually put that as high on the list.
Energy, right? Where we put our focus, right? What do we pay attention to? Absolutely. Well, Dan, I thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome to have you here as a guest, and all of your wisdom and everything. So thank you so much for
Thank you. I'm going to send this to my wife because no one's ever said I have wisdom before. So thank you. You're awesome. Right back at you, Denise. I love what you're doing, and it's so fun talking to you about this. So
Thank you.
On Mindset Monday, which
Yeah,
is
Mindset Monday.
I love that. I love that branding. So
It's
thank you.
stuff.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And again, if you all please like and follow, comment, let us know what you're thinking about these podcasts. Again, you can contact us. You can contact me directly at denise@gameplanu.org or go to gameplanu.org for more information. But otherwise, we will see you next time on Mindset Monday. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.
Take care.